Hi everyone, welcome back. This is like my 8th time trying to record this. Every single time my dog's jumped on my lap or like a plate has fallen, so this time we're just gonna power through, okay? Alright, this time we're discussing the newest and maybe final Robin, Damian Wayne, and how he would probably fight in real life. So far we've talked about Nightwing, Red Hood, and Red Robin, so if you want to check those videos out, feel free to go ahead, but you don't have to watch those videos to understand this one. Like the other videos in this series, I'm going to discuss Robin's backstory, compare him to real-life fighters, and then go through his equipment and how effective it would be in real life. For all other Robins, I've mainly gone off their portrayals in the Arkham series. However, Damian isn't in the Arkham series, so for this video, I'm mainly going to go off his portrayal from Injustice 2. Also, I'm going to be discussing adult Damian. He's typically portrayed as a kid, but I think it's more interesting to discuss him as an adult because, frankly, I'd rather discuss characters who are at their physical peak. Let's discuss Damian's backstory. Okay, so relatively early on in Batman's career, he had an altercation with Ra's al Ghul, the centuries-old leader of the League of Assassins. The reason Ra's is so old is because he has access to Lazarus pits that can resurrect him and prolong his life. The cost, however, is being further degraded after each use of the pit. After 600 or so years of life, one of Raz's main goals is to find a suitable successor. Raz saw Batman as his greatest potential replacement, but although Batman and Raz share many similar goals, Batman takes a hard line against extremism and killing of any kind, putting the two in conflict. So Raz and his league lost the chance to get a worthy successor when they crossed Batman, but Talia, Raz's daughter, managed to get pregnant from Batman. That baby was Damian Wayne. So there you go, we finally got to Damian Wayne. Anyway, for the first 10 or so years of his life, Damian was trained and raised in secret by the League, and then eventually dumped on Batman. The whole point of the birth of Damian was to become Raz's successor, the heir to the demon, but for some reason the League thought that having Damian become Robin for a while would be a good idea. Not really sure why. Anyway, Damian obviously decides to follow his father instead of the League of Assassins and becomes the 4th Robin, taking over the mantle from Tim Drake. As Robin, he's a bit young, but unlike his brothers, he is the biological son of Batman and was also trained from birth instead of from as a teenager. Therefore, Damian, on paper, should probably be the best fighter amongst the Robins, being that he was bred from birth to be so. He is, however, pretty young, just because, given his backstory, he has to have been born when Bruce was already Batman. Hence, Batman writers are wary of making him too old, because the older he is, the older you have to make every single other character in, the entire DC universe. And it's just going to mess up branding and narrative and storytelling. But, that's one of the problems with Batman. Like, you want him to grow as a character, but then he also has to kind of be, 30 for 100 years. Anyway, let's keep going. Damian, as an adult, is 5'10 and 175 pounds, making him the shortest Robin, and weighing the same as Nightwing, 14 pounds less than Red Robin, and 25 pounds less than Red Hood. Given his height and weight, Damian would probably be a lightweight fighter at 155 pounds. He's about the size of real-life fighters Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor, Khabib Nurmagomedov, and Justin Gaethje. Damian mostly fights with a two-handed sword, but as Robin and heir to the demon, Damian should be able to fight on the same level as the best hand-to-hand fighters in the world. Damian is technical like Tim, athletic like Dick, and ruthless like Jason, so I think that some comparable real-life fighters are Khabib Nurmagomedov, Conor McGregor, Dan Hooker, Tony Ferguson, and Zabit Magomedsharipov. Holy shit, I can't believe I got that right. Damian was trained in the East, so I figured his fighting style would reflect that. Every fighter in this list incorporates at least some Eastern style into their repertoire of techniques. Khabib is one of the greatest fighters of all time. He's 28-0 at the time of recording this video, and he's actually supposed to fight tomorrow. So either way, this video is going to be dated, immediately. Khabib uses Dagestani wrestling, which mostly involves chain takedowns and incredible ground control. The reason Khabib does so well is that all he has to do to guarantee a win is get one successful takedown and his opponent cannot get up. Khabib's style is so brutal and ahead of the curve that I think there is no way that Damian wouldn't be somewhat familiar with it, especially because, he grew up near Dagestan. Next is probably the most famous fighter on this list, Conor McGregor. Conor utilizes a very unique striking style that is a combination of karate stances with low hands, but precise boxing. This style of counter-striking requires extreme coordination and reflexes in order to work. Dan Hooker, also known as the Hangman, specializes in Muay Thai style striking and has a solid Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game. In fact, he got his nickname from his expert use of the guillotine choke. I've spoken about Tony Ferguson before when talking about Nightwing. I didn't really want to overlap fighters, but you can't talk about a Robin without talking about Tony Ferguson. He's like the weirdest fighter alive. The guy does freaking barrel rolls while he's in the ring, and he does Wing Chun and throws elbows and all kinds of crazy stuff. So yeah, I think Damian would utilize some of that spirit. And the final fighter that I'm going to mention is Zabit, who also comes from that kind of Dagestan region. I hope I'm right. His style utilizes a lot of rangy kicks and striking. He's actually one of the few fighters that identifies as a kung fu guy, and I don't know, it just really shows something unique, but also very effective at the same time. Anyway, so you take Khabib's dominance, Conor's precision, the Hangman's killer instinct, Tony's wild creativity, and Zabit's range of strikes, and you get how Robin would probably fight in real life. Now, we can't talk about Damian without considering his equipment and gadgets. Nightwing has his Eskrima sticks, Red Hood has his guns, and Red Robin has his staff. Damian's special weapon is a two-handed sword, typically a katana. Usually it's a two-handed single straight-edge sword. Swords are pretty decent weapons, although throughout history they were mostly considered sidearms in war. They were regularly used as weapons and status symbols throughout human history. A good way to look at how swords were seen historically is how guns are looked at modern times. Basically, a sword is to a polearm in the same way that a pistol is to a rifle. When fighting someone without weapons, a sword is a great pick. You have the advantage of range and the option to cut or slash. Given that swords can cut and chop, there is an advantage over things like Eskrima sticks and staffs that can really only smash. Also, given that swords typically have, a pointy tip, you can control space much easier by keeping the tip of the sword in front of you. The disadvantage to using a sword is that it's inherently lethal. As Robin, I don't think there would be much way for Damian to actually use this weapon as a sword, but he could do this. He could put a sheath over the sword and kind of use it like a club. And then if, like a robot or something attacks him, or Clayface, he could take out the sword part. But, we're trying to make it realistic, but whatever. There are many different kinds of swords with unique advantages and disadvantages. The best sword for armorless one-on-one combat is probably something like a rapier. Its length and dedication for thrusting just beats out the lethality of every other blade, just because it's dangerous at a farther range than other swords. The best sword for one-on-one armored scenarios, though, is probably something like a two-handed longsword. The length can vary, of course. It's often better to have the longer weapon, but in armored combat, depending on the level of armor, thrusts and slashes may not be able to guarantee damage. You really need something like a longsword that has a fine point to get through armor, a hefty pommel to use for bashing, and basically just a sword that can be used to pry open your opponent's armor after a successful takedown. The purpose of Damian's sword is basically to take down unarmored or lightly armored opponents, somehow in a way that's not lethal, but like I said, that's besides the point. A katana is not the worst choice. I'm showing a sword right now that's not a katana, but it has similar shortcomings. Basically, for a two-handed sword, a katana is pretty short. It's about the same length as arming swords, which were meant to be used one-handed with shields or on horseback. Also, the single edge means that you can't slice with the reverse edge, and overall, it just kind of limits you compared to something like a longsword. Also, the lack of guard on katanas, it just offers less hand protection. But I mean, overall, it's not a terrible pick. Now that I've probably pissed off all the people who like katanas, let's move on to Robin's other equipment. Like all the other Robins, he has the grapple gun, shurikens, and non-lethal smoke and stun grenades. Damian's only unique equipment is really that his shuriken slash birdarang slash batarang things can blow up and can be remote controlled. I'm going to go quickly through the equipment I've spoken about before. The grapple gun kind of sucks as a weapon, but might have some real-life application potential. Shuriken by themselves aren't a great weapon, and smoke and stun grenades are very useful in that, people actually use them in real life to good effect. Now, Robin's shuriken are special. Being remote controlled gives Robin the opportunity to use it at a longer range and potentially up the power and precision of the projectile, making it more useful. I'd imagine maybe someone's shooting at him and he's behind a wall. Well, now he can throw the boomerang and have it direct around the wall and kind of hit people without putting himself in danger to return fire. Also, the fact that they can explode is a bonus. Obviously, Robin's probably not going to try and blow people up, but, it's an option. Now let's discuss Robin's outfit. I'm assuming that it's bullet resistant, like I'm doing with all the other Robins, which, I mean, it's a good thing if his suit is bullet resistant, considering the job of Robin makes you get shot at a lot. Like with the other Robins, I would recommend getting rid of the cape, adding a helmet, adding a face mask, and maybe changing the colors would help too, especially because Robin is supposed to be stealthy. In conclusion, Damian Wayne as Robin would use his shuriken for long-range combat, his non-lethal explosives for disorienting his enemies, his two-handed sword with a sheath, a covering for non-lethal combat, and if he needs to, he can remove the sheath and use the sword as a sword instead of a club. And should he lose that sword, he can always revert back to his Eastern fighting style, consisting of dominant controlling grappling, precision, unorthodox striking and movement, and killer instinct. So that's how Robin would fight in real life. Damian is my least favorite Robin, really just because of his age, his serious and rough attitude, and how the writers seem to insert him into other Robin stories and have him beat people up that he has no business winning against, like Deathstroke. Even so, it's not like he's a terrible character. Anyway, please let me know if you like the video and are enjoying the series. I think I might do Batgirl next, so I can make another video comparing all of Batman's sidekicks after that. Then in the far future, I am going to break down how Batman will fight in real life, and then probably start discussing some villains. I'm actually really excited to talk about how a realistic Bane would fight, so if you're interested in any of that, please subscribe, and alright guys, I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.